Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. Hey guys, have you heard about the Haven app from the guys over at Open Bazaar? Download Haven now for iOS and Android. Go to gethaven.app. Haven is the world's first privacy-focused shopping application for iOS and Android devices. Why use apps that spy on you? Shop, chat, and send cryptocurrencies privately using Haven. Haven gives you a shopping marketplace, social posts, private chat, and a powerful cryptocurrency multi-wallet all in one mobile app. Download Haven now for iOS and Android. Go to gethaven.app/Tatiana for $5 off. This episode of the Tatiana Show is brought to you by Vaultoro. Vaultoro is a gold hedging solution for the crypto community. One of the challenges of investing in cryptocurrencies is dealing with volatility. Keeping a diversified portfolio is a key to healthy returns. I keep about 10% of my crypto assets in gold using Vaultoro. Vaultoro allows me to open a gold wallet in seconds where I can easily trade with cryptos and gold. What I like about using Vaultoro instead of Tether is that the gold in my Vaultoro wallet is insured, audited, vaulted in Switzerland, and unlike fiat money, gold has increased in value for the last 20 years. Visit vaultoro.gold/Tatiana today and get zero trading fees for the first 3 months. That is vault, like a gold vault, and oro, which is Spanish for gold. Vaultoro, ole! Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of the Tatiana Show. I am broadcasting to you from Latvia. I am at the Baltic Honeybadger Conference. It's my first time here. I've been talking to lots of different interesting people, and I wanted to share some of those conversations with you. Before we get started, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to our sponsors. Of course, my good friends over at Vaultoro, and then also you should be downloading the Haven app, which is from the Open Bazaar folks, and Salt Lending. But today I'm joined by Alexandra Moxin, the founder and CEO of the Advanced Tech Media podcast. We're talking a little bit about, the crypto space, how we both got into it. And she's also moderating a panel here, and we're talking about some upcoming crypto conferences here in Europe, though she's based in Vancouver. Anyway, thank you so much, Alexandra, for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show.
Great. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what brought you out here and how you got into the space?
Sure. So where to start? This is my second Baltic Honeybadger. I attended last year, and I was so blown away by just the quality of the venue, the speakers. Now I sound like an advertising. but seriously, there's a lot of really smart, well-intentioned people here that are, have the audacity that they can actually change the world. And I think that's an amazing thing. I think that's something that gets lost in Bitcoin is people are always talking about the price. But I think what it does is it really equalizes and brings back the individual sovereignty that we've really lost, and it's become really muted over the years. So that's kind of what attracted me to this space. I watched the Banking on Bitcoin or Building on Bitcoin documentary. Forgive me, Chris, for getting your show wrong, but so I saw that on Netflix, and I kind of didn't really want to see it, which also sounds bad. So.
That's okay. I was averse to some of this stuff myself.
Well, it was one of those, let's watch this show. And I was like, okay, fine, sure. And then I watched it 2 more times in a row because it just, something in it spoke to me. And one thing I've noticed is, I think as society, and I think this is a very good thing, I think we're starting to wake up a little bit and grow a little bit. And we're starting to question. We've lost our ability, I think, over many years to really question and think critically. And that's a really slippery slope to a very scary place if we don't start stepping up and thinking critically about things. And sometimes it's just questioning, like, why do I believe in this? Why do I have a visceral reaction about something? Why, when I'm confronted with a different opinion on something, does it seem to affect me so strongly? And we've also become, as humanity, really muted. Like, the power of the individual, I think, is a very good thing. And there's nothing wrong with being a winner or, winning and losing. There's nothing wrong with that scenario. The fact that we all have to have participation medals, I think is really sad. And one of the things I love about Bitcoin is it's uncompromising. It works. There's no feelings in it. There's no, it's based on a rational set of assumptions. And we see a lot of free thinkers, but, for me, it's been Bitcoin, and Bitcoin only from the start, even though I got into it just before the rise of the peak of Bitcoin being $20,000 plus or minus. So, I was interested in other protocols at the beginning, but just purely because I was learning, zero-knowledge proofs were kind of interesting. With the podcast, we interviewed somebody who used to work at Coinbase. I think actually he's still there. He's doing a practicum there, and he got a whole bunch of really interesting things to say. But the more I dug into it, I took a course at University of Nicosia, the MOOC. I think I was MOOC 9. Which is a fantastic course. If you're new to the space and you want a grounding in like what is this, and staying away from all the marketing for whichever protocol you're looking at. Although I strongly recommend Bitcoin. It's good because it's set up like a university course. It's somewhat impartial because it's a university. There's a lot of weighing and balancing, but when you look at the protocol, it talks about like how does Bitcoin work. So that's how I got into it.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about your podcast.
Sure. So the podcast is something that started because we need more good sources of information and unbiased sources of information. So I started out with I was a co-host on a tech podcast called Vancouver Tech Podcast. Probably about 3 years ago, and I did that for about 6 months. It was a weekly news show focused around tech in Vancouver and some of the meetups you could go to. And we often had special guests every week that we would interview, so CTOs or highly technical, specialized developers, usually Vancouver based. And that was one of the reasons why I left the show. Is it was only Vancouver based, and I think globally there's just so many interesting things that are happening. The podcast itself is focused on the emerging tech space. So while we talk a lot about Bitcoin, when it comes to cryptocurrency, we also talk about many other things. So I've spoken to people from IBM, from Microsoft, and all in really emerging tech spaces. So either XR or AI, and I know I'm throwing a lot of buzzwords out there, but really talking to experts that have been there from the start and people that have created protocols, people that have created, one of my favorite interviews is with Dr. Richard Stallman, RMS. He's very opinionated. He's the president of the Free Software Society. He's based out of MIT, and if you go to our show notes page, you'll see pretty much a page of awards of what he's received. And really, it's just fascinating talking to people that just see that there's a better way. And for me, I've always wanted to put that out into the world. And why not?
So what's coming up for you? I know you've got some upcoming conferences. And what is it that you really like to talk about? What do you like to participate in when you're on the stage?
So that's a good question. With Baltic Honeybadger as a moderator, we're kind of given free rein to talk about what it is that we wanted to talk about. We could pick who spoke on our panel. So I chose two very opinionated people that have been in this space for a long time. Both have been on the podcast, so I'm interviewing. So I'm moderating the panel on scaling, 5 years of scaling. Or scaling 5 years on. So scaling 5 years on. So I'm speaking with Adam Back and Giacomo Zucco, neither of who need an introduction if you're in the space. If you're new to the space, Dr. Adam Back is CEO of Blockstream. He's a cypherpunk. He's the creator of Hashcash and a number of other things. Giacomo Zucco is director of BHB, and he's got a new initiative that's focused on education in the space, and he's been involved in Bitcoin for a long time. So both are very opinionated. And I think, again, that's a really good thing. And so we're talking about in 5 years, scaling has been a very contentious thing. And we've seen things such as SegWit, SegWit 2X, and just some real landmines that have really threatened to hurt the protocol. And it's really interesting when you're talking to people in the space, because often the people that are very passionate about things and want to change things don't realize the unintended side effects that, if we have bigger blocks, well, what does that do when it comes to replicating, the nodes? Like, it's not... You have to think a few steps beyond the next, 2 or 3. And, it's creating a distributed system. Not that I've done it myself, but it's hard. And, Bitcoin is unique, and it exists, it's talking to Samson Mo on a previous episode. He was talking about Samson Mo, sorry. So talking to Samson Mo on a previous episode, he was saying, we talked a little bit about Bitcoin's immaculate conception. And really it's something that, there were numerous tries at creating digital gold, and of course, when you've got distributed communication on the internet, it makes sense. Why would you not have a digital currency? But if we're just replicating the issue that we have in the current economy now, where there's nothing value-based about our money, and we're seeing that all over the world, that's not interesting. I think what's really interesting about Bitcoin is the fact that we've got a fixed supply. It's backed by, many, many, many kilowatts of power. And I think it's bringing back value to the world in a really solid way. And, can it scale on layer 1? Probably not. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it can scale on layer 2. And I think having really strong security in layer 1 is the most important thing, because that's what we don't have currently now in our money supply. And that's if your money doesn't mean anything, why use it? And all of a sudden things are getting more expensive, and, you've got inflation, and just you start kind of metering out value in a way. I don't quite know what I mean by that, but it's, Bitcoin really brings back rational thought, and it brings back value into the world. And it's one small piece, but it's a pretty integral piece. And I think that's really what keeps me in the space is, seeing that and seeing what's happening across the world, and kind of how we're awakening just in general. And I think that's a good thing.
When moon?
Well, I mean, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, right? I think it's going to happen slowly over time, and then possibly all at once. But, I mean, none of us are... You can look at charts, you can look at TA, or technical analysis, but, if we could all see the future, we would all be there. I'm sure we'd all love to live in fortresses on Mars or other planets around the universe, and now I sound like a complete crazy person.
I don't want to live in Mars, for the record. People keep talking about this. I'm like, Earth is, hard enough. But, okay, carry on.
No, but it's, I think fundamentally our human nature is one of curiosity. And, we've traveled the world, and we've set up cities and, fought wars, which is not a good thing, but we're always looking to expand, and we're looking to do new and interesting things. So, I don't know. I think Bitcoin opens up a lot of possibility, and yeah.
I have another question. I'm curious, what did you do before crypto? Did you have a technical background, or what happened?
Yes and no. I'm technical enough to be dangerous, although I'm working on that. So over the last few years, so I don't have a classical computer science background or anything. My background is actually psychology. Technically, it's pre-med. I was looking to become a doctor at one point, and at one point I just wanted to finish, so I focused on psychology and finished. So I have this weird, almost classical studies. It took me 5 years to go through my undergrad, as I wanted to spend a little bit more time. And then with psychology, it was just really theory-based and not really grounded in reality. And that's one of the reasons why I started in psych. I looked at medicine, and then I just wanted to finish. So, I don't know. What drives me is I've always been very interested in understanding things and fixing things that are broken, and really understanding why things work. And I think a lot of people in this space, not to generalize, but we see broken things, we want to fix them, because why should we accept that they're broken? Why should we just accept that that's just the way things are? And I think growing up I heard that a lot. It's like, don't ask why, just because. And it's like, that's not cool. That's not an acceptable thing. If something's broken, can you fix everything? Absolutely not. But can you start fixing some things? Yes.
Excellent. This has been great. Thank you so much for joining me one more time. Thank you to my good friends at Vaultoro. Check out their Vault token. Of course, the HavenApp on iOS and Android, and Salt Lending, so you don't have to sell your cryptos right away. One more time, if you could tell the audience where they can find you on Twitter and also your podcast, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So on Twitter, that's actually usually where you can find me. So at Alexandra933. And then the podcast is ADV Tech, so ADV TECH podcast, all one word. You can also find the podcast at advancedtechmedia.org. The reason why it's .org is we're big believers in open source. which I know RMS would kill me for saying because he hates the word open source, but really free and open source, keeping things accessible and keeping things, so that you can change them.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really had a great time.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Awesome.
Tatiana.
Thanks. Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to the Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond.